need coffee, more coffee. There's that big red thing in there. We'll make some.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Oh, no. Hi, Rob Browne here with you this morning on this cold. It is cold here in Cross County, Memphis. I don't even know if it's 40 degrees, probably 38, 40, something like that. A lot to talk about today. Chris Lee, Southeastern 14. Vandy Rivals will be checking in with us here in just a moment from Nashville. Also be joining Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports over in Athens, talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. They get ready this weekend. Next up, Missouri. Tell you what, then they got Ole Miss. You got to go to Knoxville to play Tennessee, and then Georgia Tech. Look, the schedule, when you look at it in July, when you're sitting on the beach drinking a beer, everything looks easy. As you get closer to reality, you find out climbing that wall, it's tougher and tougher as you get toward the top. We'll talk, though, with Jordan Hill about Georgia, fresh off that 43-20 victory over Florida this past Saturday, world's largest outdoor cocktail party down in Jacksonville. Johnny Ballpark Franks, the big picture, go Noles, checks in with us. The man's interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than anybody in college football history. He'll check in with us at the top of hour number 2. And then Rodney Orr on the May Veterinary Clinic and Tider Insider Tuscaloosa report covering the Crimson Tide, talking about their big matchup. Oh, don't forget, they're playing LSU Saturday, and it'll be a fun one. It'll be a fun one there in Tuscaloosa, and it'll be, look, that game is a rivalry of certain proportions because you've got the Nick Saban factor. You know, he was at LSU for 5 years, and then now he's been in Alabama. I think this is year number 17 for the Sabanator, and he's loved everywhere he's ever been. Of course, LSU fans and Frank Duffy, it's kind of fun, likes to claim that he's won the last 6 national championships at Alabama that should be LSU's. Like, well, you know, you can argue that all along, but it does make it fun. And it'll be a great game, I think, Saturday. You got Alabama's defense playing a lot better. Jalen Milroe has improved a lot at quarterback. LSU with Jaden Daniels, their offense leads the nation. They're powerful, but their defense, they're struggling on defense. They have not been able, in my opinion, their front 7 is where they're struggling. And because of that, I'm not ready to pick the game yet, because LSU, if you go back in 2019, when LSU won the national championship, they ended up going into Tuscaloosa and winning like 46-43 or something like that. And they outscored people. That's what they did. Their defense in 2019 was good. It wasn't great. They played just enough defense to win all the games. Alabama in 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, they were averaging, 45 plus points a game. This year, they're much more like they were back in 2015 and those early years. Chris, talk about this LSU-Alabama game coming up. We've got Auburn at Vanderbilt. There are a bunch of good games. Georgia-Missouri is a sleeper.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, you better, and I made a point, when you're sitting down in Orange Beach or Destin on 30A in July, drinking a beer, reading a football magazine, you look at the schedule and you think, oh, this is easy. And as you get closer to it, it's kind of like that deferred enlistment in the Marine Corps a year from now. I'm not even thinking about it. You get close to it, reality sinks in. But welcome aboard. And tonight, the college football playoff rankings come out.
Yeah, apologies. I've got limited time today and was
Gotcha.
had a little trouble. It's been a morning here in the Lee
Yeah.
household, but yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of parity in the SEC right now, and if you have a little weakness, a little crack, it can become a big crack in the early. That's a lot of what we're seeing. But the fun of it is things are a whole lot less predictable than they used to be, and that's true on a national scene too. I'm looking at power rankings at a lot of places, and I think the separation between the top 10 or 12 teams in the country, between 1 and 12 is probably less than I ever remember, and I think that's going to make for a really fun November, December, and January.
Yeah. Well, I just I'm hoping we're going to have Bill Hancock on the show tomorrow morning or Thursday morning talking about these playoff rankings. But that committee, they're out there in Dallas right now, tucked away in a bunker, coming up with the teams. Give me your top 4.
My top 4. This is my guess of what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, and Washington in some order. And the Michigan would be the one that I have a lot of trouble with, because Michigan, the computers have as the best team in the country, but you look at the resume, the teams it has beaten. I mean, Michigan's best win right now is Rutgers at home, Minnesota on the road, Nebraska on the road. I don't know. It just depends on where they weight things. And look, Michigan's going to have a chance to make it up on the back end, but you can't project to win over Ohio State or let's see who they got left. Penn State. Maryland would be a nice win on the road. I think you have to call it like you see it at the moment, and Michigan's opportunities are more ahead than behind.
I agree with you, Chris. That strength of schedule ranks where right now numerically?
I mean, I would have
it's
to.
It's got to be way down.
And look, Georgia's got the same issue right now too, but Georgia's also, and you can't tell me this won't matter. We can put names out there and try to forget the past, but the fact that Georgia's won 25, 26 straight games, whatever it is now, won the last 2 national championships, and by the way, playing better as the stakes get higher. I just think that's something. The committee is run by humans, and I think that's going to be tough to forget too. I don't know that if in terms of resume and what Georgia's done that you would put Georgia in today. But again, that part's hard to ignore.
Well, it is. So you're talking now with, and I like some of these comments that are coming in on the text line, but Michigan, I don't know what's going to happen on the signals thing. Is that a technical violation? Is that a spirit of the game violation? But that's an issue hanging out there.
Well, and it seems like the NCAA has really sunk its teeth into Michigan. And my question is going to be, what can it do midseason? If it tries to do something midseason, is it going to get sued? Or something like that? And how much is the threat? And I'm completely poking around the dark here. I have no knowledge of any of this. It's just how this stuff works. The NCAA has been largely powerless over the last few decades, or especially the last few years, and nobody wants to be sued. I'm just really wondering how that's going to play out. I mean, it's clear to me that the NCAA has got its teeth into Jim Harbaugh like a rabid dog, but the legal system and what that could mean. And again, I'm just speculating. Sometimes people want to do things, but then the threat of this or that keeps them from doing those things.
Well, CFP rankings tonight, Georgia and Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Ohio State, strength of schedule. How much will that play in determining 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Well, at some point, it's kind of pointless anyway, right? Because these teams, I mean, how many of these college football playoff contenders play somebody that can actually beat them? Like, for example, let me run through Michigan's schedule. Bowling Green, East Carolina, Indiana, UNLV, we're not going to beat Michigan. Michigan State was not going to beat Michigan this year. Nebraska, not going to beat Michigan this year. Minnesota, same thing. I mean, the best win probably right now is Rutgers. And so you're going, well, okay, on the strength of who it has beaten, I don't know where you put Michigan today. Now, if Michigan beats Penn State on the road, beats Maryland on the road, beats Ohio State at home, and I would presume handles Purdue like it's handled everybody else, that's a playoff resume. But we're doing it on Halloween. And right now, in my mind, if you're looking at big wins, you got some other teams that rank ahead of Michigan. So it's just, how do you factor in today? How good do I think this team is versus what is its resume? And these teams that are contenders, there's only so many teams they play that can really beat them. And Michigan has not played the ones that can yet.
Well, Ohio State, they're out there. They've got their minders on every network. You watch a TV, college football, if it's the big noon show, Fox, Big 10, Big 12, wherever it is, somehow they will find their way into the CFP rankings. They're America's team, according to the 3 city blocks and the 6 big ones up in New York. That's how they do it. Look what happened in 2020. They played 3 or 4 games and still got to play in the College Football National Championship against Alabama. It was basically a public beheading, but they got there.
Yeah. Well, look, the problem that college football has is these teams only play so many games that are losable. The top contenders do. No, that is getting shaved down a little bit as you see more parity. You know, instead of 2 or 3 teams that really have a shot at this, maybe you got 10 or 12 in this case. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could make. I'm looking. I keep a set of power rankings between about 3 rating systems, and I could do more, but at some point it gets repetitive. You've got about a touchdown difference between the very top, which in this case would be Michigan, and say number 11, which by power rankings would be Notre Dame. To be very specific, it's about 8 points, a little under that. I don't remember that kind of parity in college football in a while.
I don't either. I mean, and next year when we go to the 12-team playoff, TV ratings, I think nationally are going to improve because most of the teams in the top 25 in November are going to be saying, hey, we got a chance to make this playoff.
Yeah, they will. It's going to be very interesting. And next year it's going to get more interesting. I wish we had a 12-team playoff today. I think it would be fascinating. I mean, and look, we've been in this era where you've got this 4-team playoff, and the difference between 1 and 4 has proven at times to be enormous. I think now the difference between 1 and 12 arguably is less than the gap between 1 and 4. And do I like the way college football has what it's become with the portal and all these things and the way that it's played out? No. Has it created an incredible amount of parity that we may have not seen in our lifetime? Yes, I think it has.
I think the interest of fans, I always worry, as much as we're myopically focused on the SEC, the rest of the country, you've got to be careful with that. And ESPN, I always talk about how do we maintain interest of the people out in the Pacific Northwest, you know, and the fans in the South with the Apple Cup Bowl or the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State. I think this is going to do it.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think the 12-team playoff, you know, you could laugh at it and say, well, it's not going to matter. And I think those non-Power 5 conference teams are going to have trouble breaking through and doing any damage there. But I think the ones that get in, it could be a free-for-all like we've never seen. And I think you could see a 7 beat a 2 or something like that. You know, I don't know how the seedings work out, but you see what I'm saying. I think it opens up some things that that have not been on the table in the past. And my apologies here. I've got to run to another engagement. And it's been a morning here in the Lee household. But thank you for having me. And I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to come on later in the week when things calm down a little bit. And
let's absolutely do it.
Yeah.
I appreciate everything you do. We'll do it later in the week. I'll get in touch with you today.
Thank you. My apologies.
You bet. Take care. All right. And, you know, you see Frank in Knoxville, Michigan might not be playing anywhere. We're going to see what the NCAA does on this thing. Again, if you talk to college football coaches off the record, and ask them, do y'all ever try to intercept signals from the opposition? Do y'all ever do that? If they're not going to be quoted and they say it, and of course they do. And if you think they don't, you're very naive. And I think that's what's going on. But I think with Michigan, Jim Harbaugh he's a polarizing figure for whatever reason. I think he's a hell of a coach. He won at the University of San Diego. He won at Stanford. He's won everywhere that he's coached. University of San Diego is not an easy place to win. Now, Michigan is the winningest program in the history of college football. And they, from 1948 to 1997, 49 years, they won a lot of Big Ten championships. I think they've won 44 Big Ten championships. They claim 11 national championships. 10 of them were won up prior to up to 1948. They split the national championship in 97 with Nebraska. And, Nebraska won it in 94, 95, 97. And then Dr. Tom Osborne checked out, ran for Congress. He's 87 years old, still kicking up in Lincoln. Amazing man. Dr. Tom, I think he had a master's or PhD in psychology. Great motivator. So, Michigan, again, they've been playing football for a long, long time. The Big House, 108,000 or whatever every game. So, they've got a powerful brand. Hail to the victors. That Michigan fight song. Very, very, they're big. But let me go in here, and we're going to have Jordan Hill on here with us in just a minute. But you get into what's going on in college football right now. NIL, the portal, all kinds of, things that are there to distract us. Ask yourself, what have the crowds been like at college football games this year? They've been incredible. Stadium expansion is on hold for now. We did that, but what we've got now is massive, just thousands of people tailgating who are coming to the game with no intention of ever walking into the stadium. The games are selling out, but then you go to an Auburn or LSU or Alabama. Ole Miss started all this, making tailgating what it is today. I call it the Grove effect, but that's what it is. Okay, look at that SEC map behind me. Texas and OU out on the far western flank. They'll be in the league next year. And wait until the Texas and OU fans start going to these SEC venues that they've never been to before. And then when the SEC fans start going to Texas and OU, if they've never been there. I've been to Texas for games. It's pretty awesome. Austin, that city's motto is keep Austin weird. It's an incredible place. If you got kids, they probably wanted to go to a music fest out in Austin on 6th Street. You think Dixon Street is wild up in Fayetteville? 6th Street is insanity. Austin city limits, you got country, you got rock, you got everything. It's going to be wild. But I also think that having these, Southern Cal and UCLA come into the Big Ten, that's going to make the Big Ten, that'll make it a better conference because they're going to start getting more into recruiting in the state of California. It's going to be Washington and Oregon coming in as well. Phil Knight and the Nike money. I know he's given Oregon over $300 million himself. That's a lot of money. T. Boone Pickens, look what he did, $350 million to Oklahoma State. There's money out there like we've never seen before. The interest in college football, the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. Look, players have been getting paid under the table since the beginning of time. And if you don't think that, you're naive. It's been going on. I think what's going to happen is the free market will work this stuff out. And you will start seeing, and less, you're already hearing less talk about these NIL deals, because a lot of this is just people trying to brag about, what they're paying. I mean, I know we see figures on a lot of these schools, what they have in their checking account for their NIL, 15, 20, $30 million. But they're not going to spend that stuff foolishly. And there are contracts that are going to be written. So you watch what happens. But I'm going to say, let's see here. Steve in Atlanta, Georgia will be number 1 in the CFP rankings. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised at all that Georgia's number 1. Sandy in Memphis, college football playoff rankings tonight, when they come out, top 4. Georgia, of course, the back-to-back national champions, 25 straight victories. Michigan, Florida State, and Washington. So you got the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12, which is Washington's about to be a member of the Big Ten. So you see all this stuff going on. You could say Ohio State belongs in there. I don't know. Ohio State they're not beating the hell out of people. Again, how tough is their schedule? Hell, we don't know. What we do know is that Michigan's strength of schedule is not that strong. And, looking around here, and I'm looking at the rankings. I mean, look at this. Georgia, right now, coming in October 29th, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington. I'm not going to put 2 Big Ten teams in my top 4. Number 5, Washington. Number 6, Oregon. A lot of people will tell you, and this is what happens. You make mistakes. A coaching error that Dan Lanning at Oregon admitted, hey, I screwed up. Okay. Oregon just went on the road and trounced Utah 35-6 in Salt Lake City. That's a big, big win. I've got a ton of respect for Kyle Whittingham, head football coach at Utah. 19 years. He took over for Urban Meyer. So Oregon, number 6. Number 7, Texas. Steve Sarkisian. The Texas brand is over $1.1 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal. Alabama's brand, a little over $1 billion. Georgia's brand, a little over 900. Oklahoma, just under 900. Auburn, 872 million. Powerful brands. Okay, number 8, Alabama. Think about it. Kirby Smart was on Nick Saban's staff. He's doing his magic at Georgia. Steve Sarkisian, he's been around, but he spent several years with Nick Saban. That's not the only reason he's a good coach. He's a hell of a play caller. He's got Quinn Ewers out right now. Malik Murphy played quarterback the other day, the big kid out of California. Arch Manning. Again, I don't know. You got an interesting storyline developing there. Is Arch Manning going to stay at Texas? Or is he going to transfer to Ole Miss, which is what a lot of people want to see happen? That would be an unbelievable story. Okay. Number 8, Alabama. Kevin Steele's defense has helped a lot as Jalen Milroe is learning how to play quarterback in the SEC. Number 8, Alabama has LSU Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Number 9, Penn State. They've got probably the number 1 defense in the country. Number 10, Oklahoma. Hell, they lost to Kansas over the weekend. Kansas is pretty damn good. Lance Leipold's a hell of a football coach. This guy, he's been around a long time. He's won everywhere he's ever been. And Kansas is a remarkable story, more so than what Bill Snyder did with Kansas State, which was Kansas and Kansas State were regarded as the two worst football programs in America. You get the right people in there, you can win. Number 11, Ole Miss. Haven't won the SEC since 1963. They're in the mix. They've got a tough schedule. They got to play at Georgia. Got to play Mississippi State. I mean, they've got tough games. Everybody's got tough games. Okay, number 12, Notre Dame, 7-2. They've won and lost some close games. Number 13, LSU, 6-2. Well, they go on the road. They play. This is their big one. They play at Alabama Saturday. Number 14, Missouri. LSU went on the road and won at Missouri. Missouri, how good are they at 7-1? They've beaten 7 of the 8 teams they've played. You don't get style points. 15, Louisville. They just keep doing it. 16, Oregon State. DJ Uiagalelei, it didn't happen at Clemson, but it damn sure is out in Corvallis. Number 17, Air Force, 8-0. One of 3 group of 5 schools that are undefeated, as Sonny would say, along with James Madison University, who can't go to a bowl or playoff a bowl this year because they're so new in the D1 rankings. All right. Air Force, James Madison, and Liberty. Liberty, Hugh Freeze's old school, is 8-0. I guess he helped recruit some talent up there. Air Force, 8-0. Utah, number 18, 6-2. They've won back-to-back Pac-12 championships. Tennessee at 19 at 6-2. UCLA 20 at 6-2. Tulane 7-1, number 21. Willie Fritz, hell of a job coaching. Guy's been in the JUCO ranks a long time, building a solid program at Tulane. Very impressive. Kansas, Lance Leipold, 6-2, number 22. James Madison again, 8-0, 23. Southern Cal, 7-2, number 24. I wouldn't even rank Southern Cal. They don't believe in defense. Ridiculous. Lincoln Riley, his brother Garrett Riley's offensive coordinator at Clemson. That's not working out. Kansas State, number 25 at 6-2. Yeah, we've got parity in college football, folks. When was the last time Kansas and Kansas State were both ranked in the top 25? Wow. It's been a while, and I'm not sure if that's ever happened, okay? All right, we're going to do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports in Athens, is with us, and we'll talk Georgia. Where do they go? Where are they going to be when the rankings are released? It's going to be fun after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sideline.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you and bringing in Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports over in Athens. And man, I'm telling you what, lots of comments and stuff coming in and trying to get to them. But welcome aboard. Had Chris Lee on, Vandy Rivals, Southeastern 14 in the first segment. He had to bail out about 15 after, had a kind of a emergency there with at home. He's going to be back on later in the week. But I was going over the top 25. The College Football Playoff Committee meets tonight. Don't they release the rankings tonight at 6 or 7 o'clock? And, there's people out there thinking Georgia will be 4th or 5th. I mean, I know that it's legal to smoke weed in some states and all, but all the time, why would you not rank Georgia? And I'm not saying this because you're on here, but you have to respect 25 straight wins, back-to-back national championships. But you know what? If they do move them to 2 or 3, God help you if you're the team, Missouri, Kirby Smart will use that as only Kirby Smart knows how to do it. I know he's got like a business degree from the Terry College of Business at Georgia, but it's playing right into his hands.
Yeah, he won't be sad if they are not number one. And to be honest, Rob, I don't think they will be. My guess is they'll be number 2. I think Ohio State may be number 1 basically because of beating Penn State. And
Yeah,
I don't get caught up in the first ranking. I don't know if you remember, Tennessee was number 1 in the first ranking last year. We saw how that turned out for Tennessee. Going back, way back, I want to say 2014 was the first year they had the playoff. Mississippi State was number 1. I hate to break this to you, Rob, if you don't remember, neither Mississippi State or Tennessee made the playoff either of those years. So I know Georgia fans will get upset if they're not number 1. I can understand that, like you mentioned, 2-time defending national champs, the success they've had this year. But I just encourage people, don't get mad about stuff that's not worth getting mad about it. If Georgia takes care of business, not only will they make the playoff, but they'll probably be the number 1 seed. They've got what turns out to be a pretty impressive close to the season, playing Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and not a bad Georgia Tech team. We saw what they did against North Carolina, but I understand, and I'm kind of already bracing for fans being upset by tonight's rankings. But you just can't lose very much sleep over it because, like I said, as long as Georgia takes care of business, it won't be a problem.
Well, and I'm totally with you. Mississippi State in 2014, I think they were number 1 for 4 or 5 weeks until they had to go to Tuscaloosa and lost like 25-14 or something. But that's a cool footnote in history, for trivia questions. But I'm with you. I could care less. I mean, Georgia's not going to be out of the top 4. You know that. If you're 2, if you're 1, 3, so what? You win this schedule, and just you and I talked about it in the summer when you're down at Sea Island or St. Simon's or Destin, whatever, reading a football magazine, drinking a cold beer, a road soda. You look at that schedule. Oh man, that's nothing. Every week, you're dealing with 18 to 23-year-olds, or in this stage, 25 and 30-year-olds because of the virus. Some of these guys, they're never going to leave. They're never leaving. They're going to have children and be playing on the team. But I'm looking at it now and going, okay, you got Missouri Saturday. Let's talk about that one because the last time I remember Missouri beating Georgia was October 4th or 5th of 2013 in Athens. Gary Pinkel was still the coach at Missouri, and that was Mark Richt's team. And that wasn't a great Georgia team, but they did do it once.
Yeah, Missouri, it was kind of funny when they joined the SEC. They had a pretty decent run there, played for the SEC title, I think, consecutive years, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, correct.
But since then, for the most part, Georgia's taking care of business. And I do need to say that last year was the closest, really before the Peach Bowl against Ohio State. That Missouri game was the closest Georgia came to losing. And, heard Kirby Smart, Cedric Van Pran talk about this on Monday, that game last year was really big for that team growing up. And, Kirby talked about when you fall behind, you can't really make excuses. You have to kind of look at yourself in the mirror and say, all right, what are we doing wrong? And, Kirby made sure to credit Missouri because they did a lot right in that game. But he said, we did plenty to help their cause and help them out. So, yeah, I mean, you can't sleep on this game. I think this is a really good Missouri team. Was really close to being undefeated, just fourth quarter. Got away from them playing LSU at home. But I think this is a good team. I was honestly kind of surprised that Georgia is like a 20.5 point favorite. I think that's come down a little bit since that line first came out. But I think this is a Missouri offense that can make a lot of plays and can keep up with Georgia. I'm just not convinced Missouri's defense is going to be good enough to get the stops they're going to need to have a chance to win on the road.
Yeah, I don't either. And we talked about this on the round table Saturday morning before the Georgia-Florida game. Lauren Smith joined us, and that was fun. God, I love that guy. And Frank Duffy, I think one of our members on the team, said, what scares you about, and maybe it was Doug Dean, but one of them said it, with Georgia is without Brock Bowers, that's going to force Carson Beck and Georgia to dig deeper into their toolbox. And there are going to be guys like, who's this guy? And there's so many weapons on this team. And one of my favorite names, I always think of Liam Neeson and Taken, Ladd McConkey. I mean, and isn't he from Georgia? What town's he from?
He is, I think he went to North Murray High School. I'm forgetting what town that is. It's in North Georgia. I can't remember where, but yeah, he's a Georgia guy. What's funny, and this kind of goes back to what we always talk about with these rivalries. From North Georgia, he grew up a big Tennessee fan, and Georgia kind of came in, and Tennessee didn't really show the interest. And I would have to say Jeremy Pruitt. I believe Pruitt was a coach then.
Yeah.
That would be one he would have liked to have had back because McConkey has been great. And I think the greatest sign for Georgia coming out of that Florida game during the telecast, CBS's Jenny Dell mentioned that, after having the bye week, Ladd felt 100%. And I felt like that was, to me, when Brock got hurt, my focus was on Ladd McConkey because he's that obvious go-to guy without Brock. And he showed out. He was SEC Offensive Player of the Week because of how he played against Florida. And I'm expecting more of the same from him in the coming weeks.
Well, that Florida-Georgia game, world's largest outdoor cocktail party, great rivalry, unbelievable crowd. I love that game. I felt like Florida would jump on top early and then Georgia would just crush them as the game went along. Kind of what has been happening lately. What were the takeaways from the game? What did you like and what did you not like? And what did you see that concerns you about playing against Missouri, playing against Ole Miss, playing on the road at Tennessee, and then Georgia Tech?
Yeah, got to watch Georgia Tech. To me, the biggest thing was that the offense kept rolling without Brock Bowers. You kind of wondered if there would at least maybe be a quarter where they sort of, I don't know about lost, but it looked harder, and it really didn't. I want to say Georgia might have had like 390 yards of offense. I'd have to look, but played really well. Carson Beck played really well in his return to Jacksonville. I was most impressed by the defense. They give up a touchdown on the opening drive, and you kind of go, okay, this may be a 4-quarter shootout. After that, lights out. And, did a great job on 4th and short. Smile Munden reads out that the running back's getting the ball, goes back there, gets the stop. And then it was just like one thing after another. Forcing a fumble, Graham Mertz, they recover it, give the offense ball in like the 11. And, you turn around and with the way the offense, the defense, special teams, which blocked a punt and got the team 2 more points, you turn around and Georgia scores 36 unanswered. And, it kind of felt like the Florida game. I think that might have been in 21 where they scored 21 points in like a minute and a half or 2 minutes of game time. It was pretty absurd. I think that was a great sign, the defense especially, because there were guys who were stepping up that we hadn't seen a ton of. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins has been dealing with a foot injury all year. He'd only played in the opener against UT Martin before Florida, and then he's the one who forced that fumble. Marvin Jones Jr., a sophomore, he fell on the fumble. He played really well. Jalen Walker, who very touted inside linebacker, and they're just so deep there that they've tried to find different roles for him. He's been more of a pass rusher, and he played outstanding against Florida. I mean, Florida's right tackle just looked lost.
Yeah.
As far as concerns, there wasn't a ton. I think the biggest thing is the defense. As 2 straight games where opening drive team has gone down and pretty much scored right away. And then you go back to earlier in the year, that happened against South Carolina too. But when you allow that and then you play the way you do the rest of the way, it's not quite as big of a deal. But you do have to keep that in mind that they have struggled a little bit out of the gates. And if you get into a situation where you're playing a really, really talented team, you need to get every stop you can.
Well, what are you seeing out of Florida? I mean, they're sitting there number 3 in the country right now in recruiting. Georgia's probably number 1. And Billy Napier, he's won and he's been around some great coaches, but they got killed by Kentucky. And they beat Tennessee. And then they get beaten 43-20 by Georgia. They lost at Utah in that first game, August 31st. Had 2 number 3s on the field at one time, but that's 3 losses for Florida. But, they look like they're building. They're getting some big time defensive linemen. DJ Lagway might be the best quarterback in America. I mean, you see that rivalry getting closer, or I think Georgia's got like an 11 or 12 game lead all time, but it's been one where when Spurrier was there, he was 11-1. And then what was that period? Spurrier, the Zucker, and Urban Meyer, it was 18-3 in that period. Georgia's on that same trajectory, aren't they?
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned Spurrier. I remember at one point in that rivalry, I think he was still at Florida. Florida was like 15 games behind Georgia in the series, and somebody asked him, do you think you'll be around to see the gap close? And he just smiled and said, 15 years is a long time, like they were going to win it every year, and they about did. I do like what Billy's building. I think they've done a really good job recruiting. I just sort of think in that game Saturday, they just sort of outsmarted themselves. They were playing really well. I didn't mind them going for it on that 4th and short. I thought the play call was horrendous. They have been averaging something like 4.5 yards a carry in the first quarter, and that was about probably the second play of the second quarter when they went for it. But just trying to be too cute, Graham Mertz walks up there like he's going to tush push, and they snap it between his legs to the running back who's going to throw the ball. I think they'd been better suited just handing it to Travis Etienne and just letting him kind of push, because they had done a very good job running the ball. I do like what I've seen on the whole of what they're doing, but, I don't – some of Billy's play calling kind of leads me to question things. And, there were some execution issues in that game. I don't think nearly as egregious as that Utah game, where at times it kind of felt like they were just lost, like they didn't really know what they were doing. But I do think they got a lot of potential, and it all comes down to players. Kirby talks about it all the time. And Florida's doing a very good job of accumulating really good players. And that's going to be what gives them a chance if they are going to close the gap in this series with Georgia.
Well, you look at it, Florida, you're right. Billy Napier's calling all the plays, and he's also got more staff members than he does football players. We talk with Franz Beard, GatorBetMedia.com, Buddy Martin, Ben Troop, Allie Peak Wilbur. We got a lot of great Gator coverage we get. You have so many people. Do you think he'll turn that over and go hire an offensive coordinator? I mean, it's someone else to call the plays, something different, because the Florida fans, I think Billy Napier will be successful at Florida. I do, but I don't control things down there.
It's hard for me to say. Just not covering the program, and definitely not, getting to see what he said post game. But sometimes that's hard for guys to give up, and sometimes you're gonna believe. I find this hard to believe, Rob. But sometimes football coaches are really hard headed. But I don't know. I thought on the whole it wasn't a poorly called game, but there were just moments like that 4th down where it's like, look, don't be cute against Georgia. Like just line up and try to beat them to the line, try to get a yard. And I think especially in a team like Georgia, sometimes you make a mistake and then it's like, you get punched 4 times in a row, and then you're kind of looking, and I mean, that's kind of what happened with Florida. You kind of turn around and all of a sudden it's like 26-7, and you're like, man, how did that happen? It was just, 3 or 4 minutes essentially. So yeah, I don't know if he absolutely has to turn over the play calling, but it's a lot on a head coach's plate, and you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're trying to build something, especially in a world where recruiting is so important. It's probably something he's going to be asked about a good bit going forward.
Well, now look, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart. You got those 6 eyes looking at tape defensively. How are you going to get better than that? How long does Glenn Schumann stay around? Will Will Muschamp want to go back and try the head coaching thing again, or is he like, you know what? I love being a coordinator here in Athens at school where I went with my teammate Kirby Smart. But a lot of people are going to come after, and we've already seen Dan Lanning leave. And what did Georgia do the next year? They won another national championship. Not that he wasn't good, but is Kirby the rock that holds everything together?
Definitely, and that's not to say he does it alone. I'm of the belief that Muschamp's not going to be a head coach again. I think he's very happy being back at Georgia. I think that had he not gotten the South Carolina job, he comes to Georgia in 2016 as a defensive coordinator with Kirby. But you can't turn down a chance to be a head coach again. I don't blame Will for doing that at South Carolina. Schumann's the big question. He interviewed with the Eagles last year to be the defensive coordinator. I think that the talks were relatively far along, and then he decided he was going to stay at Georgia and got a pay raise as a result. He's got to watch. And the question is if he is going to be a head coach at a Power 5 at a major school, or if he's got to kind of prove himself. Because there's a lot of people that are really excited about him as a potential candidate at Alabama whenever Saban retires. And I'm just not of the belief that they would hire him without him being a head coach somewhere before that. Now, if he went to Alabama as defensive coordinator for a few years and then, was promoted from there, then I'd say that's more likely. But, there was consideration. There was at least fans who thought there was a chance he would go to Alabama this offseason after they got rid of Pete Golding, and that clearly didn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, Schumann's the guy to watch. What that next opportunity will be for him, I'm not sure. But he's definitely done a tremendous job at Georgia. And he's definitely going to have big opportunities in these next few years. He's just going to have to weigh them and decide if he'd rather stay in Athens or try to go do something elsewhere.
All right. You think this will shut up these jackasses that say that Mike Bobo's no good? Total passing yards per game. Washington, number 1. Washington State, number 2. The Apple Cup Bowl will be exciting this year. I know you're going to be watching it. I'm going
Definitely.
to.
And
okay.
No chance, yeah. Rob. That will not shut up anybody. That people came in with a preconceived notion of what the Bobo offense would be, and I do understand people who were reluctant, or at least was like, "Let me see what this looks like." Because the last time he was offensive coordinator, I covered that team at Auburn in 2021, and it didn't go well. And you can say that. Look, Bo got hurt. They were 6-2 when Bo Nix gets hurt, when they blow the big lead against Mississippi State, and it kind of falls apart from there. But nearly beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl. If Tank Bigsby doesn't go out of bounds, maybe you do win that game. If Brian Harsin would have called, was a little more gutsy in overtime and run the 2-point play, they wound up running a few overtimes later and beating Alabama. But I think that, especially, it's really more on defense, but even on offense at this point, I think Kirby has earned the benefit of the doubt. And, he was asked about promoting Mike and said, that he felt like that was the right move, and that, this wasn't a situation where it was just one of his friends, he wanted to give the job to. He felt like Mike had earned it. And I think that Mike has really rewarded that loyalty and that opportunity. He's done a tremendous job. And even when the offense wasn't, clicking on all cylinders, even if there was a few misfires, I don't think there's been a game this year where I've been like, what are they doing? What are they calling? Sometimes it's just execution, but And Mike, I think, has done a tremendous job, but there are some people out there that, why Rob, they're fourth. Why are they not third? Why are they
Yeah.
not second in passing yards? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, some people are never going to be happy, especially when it comes to Mike Bobo.
Well, I mean, look at it. Washington's number 1 in passing per game. Washington State number 2. LSU number 3. Georgia 4. Colorado State 5. Colorado 6. Southern Cal 7. Georgia Southern 8. UNC 9 and Oregon 10. That's pretty damn impressive. And again, I don't know Bobo. Mike Bobo's from Thomasville, Georgia. I do know I read where he grew up an Auburn fan. And he gave that 1 year to Auburn. He had to work with Brian Harsin. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. In the years he was at Georgia with Mark Richt, the year he was gone, 2015, to be a head coach at Colorado State, that was Mark Richt's last year. But he was there for 14 years. People get it in their head, and they usually don't think. But I mean, it's impressive because Carson Beck, this guy has quietly is developing. He was a 4-star, high 4-star out of Jacksonville. What about his future? How good can he be?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's played outstanding, and the biggest thing is he continues to take care of the football. I was really impressed on Georgia's first drive of that Florida game. There's 3rd and goal. I want to say they're at like the 5 or 6, and he could have forced a pass, tried to make a play, and he just said, "Look, I'm gonna eat it." Throws it out of the back of the end zone. No harm done. They kick a field goal. He's done a very good job of not forcing plays. Now, there's been a few mistakes along the way, some pretty bad interceptions, but he's only thrown 4 through 8 games. He's done a very good job of taking care of the football. So yeah, he's been really good. I will be interested once we get toward the end of the season what kind of NFL draft hype he gets. I at this point I think he comes back to Georgia for next season, but he's played really well, and he may look around and say this is going to be my best opportunity. It's kind of funny. I don't know that he would be a 1st-round pick, but there's all of a sudden a lot of questions. For the longest time, everyone was convinced, okay, it's either Caleb Williams or Drake May as those top quarterbacks in this class. Those guys have kind of struggled these last few weeks. And, again, not saying that I think all of a sudden Carson Beck becomes QB1, but he may look at this quarterback class and say, I like my chances to go through the combine, to show out and show that I belong. And maybe he goes higher than some of us think he's going to. And, maybe he decides after 1 year that he's ready to go on to the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, if you come back for your 2nd year, like Caleb Williams at Southern Cal after winning the Heisman Trophy, people have a lot of tape on you. They study you more than you realize. Carson Beck, this is his 1st year. Stetson Bennett was there for a while, won back-to-back national championships. You could argue, is he the most famous player in Georgia football history? I don't know. But that's a good problem to have. But Carson Beck, he's impressive. And in Ladd McConkey, he's a talented player. You think he can play in the NFL?
Definitely.
Okay.
The question is going to be durability, just because he's been banged up this year and had some injuries last year. But he got a lot of hype. I remember Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl.
Yes.
Before the season. I mean, I think he said that he thought there was a chance he could be like a top 40, top 50 pick. He'll play in the NFL. It's just sort of a matter of where. And there were some moments in that Florida game. Just hit the way he can change directions is just so underrated. I mean, he made a play. His 41-yard touchdown against Florida, makes a catch and just very swiftly just turns directions, and he's gone. You're going to overlook him because of his size and what he looks like, but dude can play. And without Ladd McConkey, I would be a lot more concerned about this Georgia offense without Brock Bowers. But you got McConkey. That is such a huge boost for Carson Beck and company.
Yeah, and just another thing to look at before we let you go. You look at the Georgia rushing game. They're not in the top 10, but they're getting it done. But, the passing game is strong. The defense is strong. Maybe it's not as good as the 21 defense or 22. Time will tell. But what are you concerned about? If I were a Georgia fan, I'd say, well, we need to get better at stopping the run. Am I right about that? Is that maybe the most concerning thing with you? You play a team that can really run the ball well, but again, Auburn ran for 218 yards and you still won the game. That's a lot to give up in the SEC.
Yeah, I'd say it probably is the run defense. I think that Florida was running the ball pretty well, as I'd mentioned, and then you kind of had to abandon it because you got behind. That there are still moments in the secondary where they've given up a few plays. I don't think it's as consistent enough where you would say, "All right, I'm really, really worried." But Saturday's gonna be a big test with that, with the way that Brady Cook has played. With Luther Burden, I mean, he's a guy they've got to lock down. He's a guy Georgia recruited really, really hard, tried to land him in high school, and obviously didn't happen. I mean, I think that you look at the run defense, if you get a team that can really run the football and has to keep you honest on your toes, Georgia's going to have to step up. And I do think they've improved over the course of this season, but they got to show up ready to play in some of these games because – I think about that Ole Miss game. Quinshon Judkins, it seems like, has really hit his stride. Got to show up and be ready to stop him, or otherwise it could be a long day.
Yeah. Listen, man, great stuff as always. And again, the Mike Bobo has proven with this, he's got a lot of talent there, but God, 4th in the nation. When was the last time Georgia ranked 4th in the nation in passing?
I'd have to look. They were super productive last year, but I don't remember where they wound up. But yeah, it's a credit to Bobo and to Carson, all those receivers. They've done an outstanding job.
It really is, man. But anyway, thank you so much for taking time to be on here with us. We really appreciate it. Let people know how they can follow you because, like I say, you are a rolling newspaper with all the social media that you put out. You do a great job.
I appreciate that. Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter Dogs247. I'll throw this out there too on the men's basketball side. Jacob Wilkins is committing tonight between Georgia and Virginia. That's Dominique Wilkins' son. So Georgia sounds like they feel pretty good, but that's going to be a commitment to watch 5:30 Eastern time. That would be a huge win for Georgia if they can get Nick's son.
And you will be putting out that information right when it happens.
You got it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be all over it.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with Johnny Ballpark Franks after this. All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Hour number 2. Johnny Ballpark Franks will be checking in with us in just a moment. Let me say also a couple of things about Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Head out there today. They are open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They've got the largest collection of duckhead I've ever seen. They got everything duckhead. Pants, shirts, jackets, pullovers, quarter zips, you name it. They've got these awesome-looking camo pants, duckhead. They've got upland pants. They got it all. They've also got their largest Filson order they've ever made at Hewlett and Dunn. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots, kids' toys. They've got luggage, all the Filson luggage, incredible STS luggage and jackets, Old South. They've got the socks, unbelievable. Hiawassee, the Thorlo socks, unbelievable boots, hunting boots, work boots. even got dress shoes. They've got it all. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, open again Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Check them out on our website, hewlettanddunn.com. Ask for the owner, Charles Hall, his wife, Laura, Raven, the whole team out there. They're committed to serving you and making the customer experience the best it can possibly be. And you'll love shopping out there. Again, they've got an inventory of great looking everything across the board. And also, rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis. Open every day of the week. Classes start different times every day. Check the schedule. Go to our website, rumbleboxinggym.com. Weekdays, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I have 48 people in these classes with elite instructors. You can buy all the gear that you need there. It's an incredible workout. If you like running, swimming, biking, lifting, you're going to get 45-minute workouts of weights and calisthenics. You will love yourself for it. It's like land swimming. rumbleboxinggym.com. Johnny Ballpark Franks, man, what a wild time it is. We've had Chris Lee, Robles Vandy, Southeastern 14 on. He had to jump about halfway through the segment. He'll be back on later in the week. And then Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. College football playoff rankings come out tonight. And I'll tell you right now, you know, John in Memphis, Texas is going to make the CFP. Well, we'll see what happens. But I got your Noles. I got your name. I got your number. I got your Noles in my top 4. They're 8-0. Who's the biggest threat to them going forward? We got to find that out. But ACC, North Carolina just a couple of weeks ago was 6-0. They've lost 2 straight. They're now 6-2. Okay. We're looking here. So there's a lot happening. Very fluid. It's very fluid what's going on in college football right now. The ACC, Clemson has been the dominant team. They've had 12 straight seasons of 10-plus wins. That will not happen this year. Okay? North Carolina, just a couple of weeks ago, Mac Browne, everybody loves him. Oh, they're going to make the playoff ranking. No, they're not. They're not going to make the college football playoff. I don't think they will. Notre Dame, they're 6-2 or 7-2. This is a tough year. There's a lot of parity in college football. And Georgia Tech beat North Carolina. Georgia Tech, when Brent Key took over as interim coach last year when they fired Jeff Collins, they're winning some games. I wish their fans would get out and support them there in Atlanta. That's a great brand with a ton of tradition. You want to hope that they will. Johnny, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry about that. Johnny, can you hear me? Yes, sir. There we go. Look, welcome to the show. Larry Bud Melman here. Look in the background. You see, I feel like the weather guy going, as you can see, a large high-pressure system will be coming down from the Pacific Northwest, bringing Pac-12 football into your living room every weekend, college football playoff. But you see, my friend,
I see Missouri. I see Missouri to the west, and you know how ironic would that be if Missouri knocks off Georgia this weekend? Missouri all of a sudden relevant again in the SEC as far as football, because it'll be Missouri in Atlanta to decide the SEC championship.
Isn't that wild? I was just telling Jordan, I remember being down at Seagrove down on 30A, fall break 2013. Missouri goes on the road, wins in Athens in 2013. Last time they did it, but that's a sleepy good game.
Absolutely. And if you have, here's the problem for Georgia. as I was saying yesterday on my show, that Alabama and Auburn have a better chance of going 3-0 in these next 3 games than Georgia does, because Georgia gets Missouri this weekend, then Ole Miss at home, and then they have to travel to take on Tennessee and Knoxville. I don't see Georgia going 3-0 in these next 3 contests. And depending on who they lose to, if it's Missouri, then Georgia will not be in Atlanta, which is not going to help Alabama. If Georgia, I think the only way Alabama gets in, because I think Florida State plays out and wins out. I think the Michigan-Ohio State winner will be the eventual champion of the Big Ten, so they're going to be in the college football playoff. If Texas does not lose, that's bad for Alabama. So if you're an Alabama fan, you're pulling for Georgia because you need that on your resume. And even then, if Alabama beats Georgia in that scenario, the SEC the last year of the college football playoff, how crazy would that be if the SEC champion is not one of the 4 college football playoff teams? Let that sink in for a second.
Because
here's the thing, because Washington, Oregon, whoever wins that, to me, if it's not Georgia, they're going to win out over Alabama. And that's the problem for an Alabama team. Alabama is pulling against Florida State, pulling against Texas, and because that's what's going to help them. I mean, first things first, if you're Alabama, you got to take care of business this weekend against LSU, and then don't have a slip up next week at Kentucky. And I get all of that. A lot of things can play out in the month of November, but there's so many strange things and scenarios on paper in the month of November where the possibility is there. If it's not Georgia, then the SEC could be on the outside looking in again.
Very well could be. And I'm looking around and saying, Michigan and Ohio State, they've got to play each other.
Right.
Michigan's won after losing 15 of 16 to Ohio State. Michigan's now won 2 in a row. They're 43rd and 44th Big Ten titles. How good is Michigan? Strength of schedule. Let's talk about that.
Well, I wouldn't really brag about their strength of schedule, and that does not help them. But then again, though, they do get Penn State and they do get Ohio State in the month of November, so that will correct itself. Just like if you want to go down that road, how about Georgia? Georgia does not have a win over a top 25 team this year to this point, but that all changes over these next 3 weeks. And then, oh, by the way, they get a very tough Georgia Tech team, which you can't sleepwalk on them either, although they're not a conference game. But what Georgia has lacked in their schedule, they will make up in the month of November. How about this crazy thing I threw out? Not only, or if you look at the current records today, but if you look at the records after this weekend, who would have had on their bingo card that Auburn would have a better record than Clemson after 9 games? Because right now they're both 4-4. I have Auburn going to 5-4 after beating Vanderbilt this weekend. I have Clemson losing to Notre Dame. So in just one short year, all these expectations for a Clemson this year, you're going to have Auburn with a better record than Clemson after this weekend.
Yeah. And think about with Clemson, 12 straight 10-plus win seasons. But you know what's weird? They have not had a offensive lineman drafted in the first round since 1963. It's weird. They got a lot
You're not
of
going to
talent.
win if you don't have a lot. And we've talked about this on previous shows. One of the ways to gauge a really great team is the strength of their offensive line. It's going to be tough to win championships with a lackluster offensive line. The other problem for Dabo, he has to adapt and bring in as far as utilize the transfer portal. Otherwise, if you're a Clemson fan, remember 2 weeks ago when he's talking about maybe we need a few losses to get people off our bandwagon, he's not going to have to worry about that. If he doesn't adapt and start utilizing the transfer portal, what we're seeing this year in Clemson will be something that will be back to the norm. Just a good team, never a great team again.
Remember the term Clemsoning?
No, I've never heard that.
Yeah. I mean, Dabo would say Clemson would have a 7-0 record and then just fall apart and say, it looks like you're Clemsoning again. And he'd be like, come on, like the term, I'd rather get Munson.
Oh, going back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
How strange is this? Another thing that I saw from the weekend, and I started yesterday, made me go back and do some research. But the fact that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, Ole Miss has had some good teams over the years. They haven't had the consistency, and the fact that they're 7-1 in back-to-back years for the first time in 60 years, the year I was born. They put it together a stretch under Johnny Vaught from 57 to 63, 7 straight years of starting out no worse than 7-1. I mean, they had some remarkable teams, but until this past Saturday, when Ole Miss knocked off Vanderbilt, Ole Miss has not put together 7-1 starts in back-to-back years since 1963. That was an amazing stat that I saw from the weekend as well.
That's the last time they won the SEC championship, too.
And they were winning national championships also back in that year. They had a couple of those under their belts. So, that was a very solid team. But when you start looking at that, obviously a lot had to go into it, adopting integration. And I think that really hurt Ole Miss with all the issues that they had in the 50s and 60s, too, as far as adapting to civil rights for all. Forget about the color of your skin. They were slow to the party as far as that was concerned. But it's been a wild last 3 or 4 weeks as far as not just in the SEC, but across the country. It's really strange. And we really haven't had a lot of chaos just yet. I think November is going to bring that. And if you're a big fan of chaos, expect it, because I think that's going to happen in the month of November as well.
Well, playoff rankings tonight. Mr. Bill Hancock and the committee are tucked away in the bunker. They're going to release them tonight at 7:00 Eastern, I think it is. And I'm hoping he's going to be on with us tomorrow or Thursday to talk about it. It makes it a lot of fun. It's interesting. So, hey, Clay in Birmingham, Clemson rose to the top. Yeah. I have said that it's nothing against Clemson, but I was going, Florida State was kind of wandering in the wilderness, but they are still, since they joined the ACC, what's the number of ACC championships? They didn't lose a game until that Thursday night contest in 1995 at Virginia. Remember they lost down on the goal line?
Yeah. Thanks for that great memory. Work done stopped just short, and you had to keep looking and looking and looking to make sure he didn't get in. And yeah, that was a disappointment. And of course, an era also without the college football playoff. That would be one of those years that Bobby would love to have had back, because before he passed away, we would talk about the number of years when we didn't have a college football playoff that they would be in. And he would give back his 2 national titles, because he would have had the opportunity during that 14 straight years of top 5 finishes. He would have had the opportunity for 9 times during that 14-year period that they would have had a chance to play for a national championship if there had been a 4-team playoff. And usually in those years, Florida State was one of those teams, you could just count on them, that they would continue to get better as the year progressed. And you would not want to face them at the end of the year. That's why they were so successful in all those consecutive bowl games as far as getting W's. They were just so well prepared at the end of the year. And those miscues during the middle of the season would always come back to haunt them and take them away out of the national championship picture.
Yeah, Florida State, that period, 87 to 2000, 14 straight years not finishing outside the top 5. Mickey Andrews had a lot to do with that. Out of Daleville, Alabama, when he came in there in 84 as defensive coordinator. Florida State, let's address this. I mean, you are an alumnus of that school.
Right.
I've been there several times. I just don't believe this, that they don't have a lot of money. Go to that campus. Mike Norvell, the people that said, oh, he's not going to make it, they're the same people that invest in the stock market, and is the first sign of trouble, they tuck and run. Okay. That's why customer behavior is everything, as well as fan behavior. But Florida State, they've got a hell of a brand.
Well, here's what they're missing, and let this sink in for just a second. They don't have the old money. And what I mean by old money, if you grow up in the state of Alabama, for example, either an Alabama or Auburn fan, you're talking about your grandfather and your great-great-grandfather being Alabama Auburn fans going back to 20. Remember, Florida State did not start their football program until the late 40s. So they're missing an extra generation or two that other fan bases of the Blue Bloods. I mean, think about how Florida State has caught up and is now one of those programs at the top of the heap as far as teams and programs that you respect and admire. The reason why they're not higher on the list as far as wins are concerned and even national titles are concerned is because they haven't been playing football like Michigan and Alabama and Ohio State. And so people forget about that. And so they're missing out on some of the older money. They're not broke. And by the way, as far as from a brand standpoint, they have that. That's why they were floating the idea to get out of the ACC by having investments into quote unquote their brand and then allowing the return on those stocks to actually pay for their departure from the ACC. And it's ironic because I just saw the latest 7-year update on what the ACC is going to look like with 17 teams. And I'm just thinking, yeah, but they're also thinking that Florida State and Clemson's there. And I wonder, too, if Clemson's, this little downturn for them, how that impacts Clemson's departure or eventual departure from the ACC. Because now it makes you wonder. It'd be different if Clemson is once again in that conversation, not only for an ACC title or a national championship title. The only program right now with, waving the flag in the ACC is FSU with Louisville distant. I mean, remember, last week we had 4 teams from the ACC in the top 25. This week, 2, and Louisville's hanging on at 15. Other than Florida State, where are the other, these teams that we thought were going to be special this year in the ACC, like a North Carolina? They've gone the opposite way. Duke became Duke. Certainly Riley Leonard's injury has hurt them, as far as moving forward W's, plus their schedule playing at Florida State. But now there's only 2 teams left from the ACC. That's the fewest number for any Power 5 conference as far as ranked in the top 25 right now.
Yeah, and you're right on about the old money, the embedded money. I mean, I'll make another comparison. Alabama's College of Business was established in 1917. That gave them a 50-year head start on Auburn's College of Business, which was established in 1967. And the College of Business at Auburn really took off in the early 90s when Bobby Lauder got involved and they built Lauder Hall. And then Raymond Harbert, the Harvard College of Business Management. And, Dr. Bill Hardgrave, my friend, who's now the president at the University of Memphis, came there in 09 to 22 and took the College of Business, and winning a national championship helped. From 2010 to 2017, enrollment increased 47%, and it's up over 70% from where it was then. For the first time ever last spring semester, Auburn's College of Business had more students than the Samuel Ginn College of Engineering. It's never happened in history. So you're right. There was a 50-year head start. Florida State started playing football. I'm going to put this up here for people to see. And you know this, Johnny. You're a historian. By the way, love the names of your dogs.
Yeah, for those that don't, that know, Henley is our first dog. She's 9 years old. She's a Scotty Westie mix, and she gets the name Henley named after a former Auburn running back, Terry Henley, from the early 70s. And so we just added to the family a year ago. He's a purebred Scotty. We named him after Major Ogilvy, the running back from Alabama, who still to this day, the only college football player to score a touchdown in a New Year's Day game 4 straight years. Major still has that record. He did it in the late 70s and right at 1980 for the Crimson Tide, as they also won 2 national titles and finished as a runner-up one of those years.
From Mountain Brook, played for 11 years at Alabama. And my friend Boyd had a dog, a great black lab named Major, also named after Major Ogilvy. That's a great name, as is Terry Henley from Oxford, Alabama.
That's right.
One of the most underappreciated things is the beauty of Northeast Alabama. Those mountains over there, Lake Gunnersville, you think you're in Interlaken, Switzerland. until you hear some people ask for boiled peanuts.
Hey, do you want to hear something that makes you feel old? We're getting ready to celebrate the final year of the college football playoff, which, as far as the format that we have right now with the 4 teams, and the first year was 2014. So this will be the 10th season of the college football playoff. 25 years ago was the very first year we had the BCS title game, matching with the system and the analytics, where the top 2 teams would play for a national title. Although 2004, I think fans of the Auburn Tigers would probably argue against that because an undefeated team, 4 players selected in the NFL draft, next draft, and yet they didn't get a chance and opportunity to play for a national title because they were on the outside looking in. And mainly because they started so low in the rankings. And although they kept winning, I mean, they moved up to number 3 in the country by mid-October, and they still could not climb any higher.
Yeah. Mark in Coleman, Alabama, home of St. Bernard's Abbey.
Mark, I like that. I like that title. I'll take that, Mark. Thank you. Thumbs up to you, Mark.
You're now the historian in residence of college football for Sidelines. And I'll tell you something else. Little idiot savant trivia here, which I got it in the noodle here. In 1974, maybe 4, Shug Jordan met this guy. He was studying discerning the priesthood at St. Bernard's Abbey in Coleman, Alabama, from Dublin, Ireland, where my family's all from, county out there in Galway Bay. But Neil O'Donoghue, great field goal kicker.
I remember Neil, yeah.
Yeah, and he got him to come down to Auburn, and he kicked for the Tampa Bay Bucks for about 25 years. He kicked a 56-yard field goal against Tennessee in 76, I think it was. But great kicker.
Mark's going to appreciate this. I remember the one of the first meals I ever had in Coleman, and I was probably 6 years of age. And this was like 69, the Allsteak, not the new location, the old location.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid that, you would have the little placemats on your table before waiting for your cheeseburger or whatever.
Yep.
And their placemat was a SEC schedule for the entire, all the teams in the league. And I remember it was always one of those cool things where I would take one and ask for another one because I always wanted to take that home with me, even at the age of 6, because I was always, I think Tulane was still a part of the SEC back then as well.
Yep. Well, you're the history of college football. This is what's so cool about it. You mentioned about Florida State, Darrell Mudra, a footnote in history. He preceded Bobby Bowden. What people forget is Bobby Bowden, and this term is thrown around a lot, but he was hung in effigy by West Virginia fans. They ran him out. Who was the athletic director at Florida State, or the board of trustees, or whatever members? Who were the people that identified him and brought him to Tallahassee?
Oh, I'm sure that you had a lot of folks there that were interested in him. And, it's just one of those things that we see this often in college football. I mean, I've used the scenario talking about Wallace Wade, the first person to win national championships at Alabama in 25-26. 3 short years later, they were running him off. Plus, Wallace Wade was a little thin-skinned and, he had an ego. So, well, okay, fine. If you don't want me here, I'll play out my contract as far as a head coach and I'll go elsewhere. So he works out a deal to go to Duke. And in his final year as head coach of Alabama, how about that send off of winning another national title and saying bye-bye? And then he goes on to Duke and they named the stadium after him at Duke with the success that he had there. But Alabama didn't hurt for too long because they won another national championship 4 short years later in 1934.
In 1941, because of World War II, they played the
I
Rose
don't like
Bowl.
the 40. I don't like the 41. The one that Alabama claims in 41. I'd rather give that one back and trade you for 77.
Yeah,
or 66, a team that had been undefeated, and this is a program that had won back-to-back national titles. And in 66, they go undefeated. And yet they don't get the national title that year. So I'd rather trade that 41 national title because they did have a couple of losses. AP poll, they were ranked going into their bowl game like 18th. So I'm not going to really accept that one, but there's a couple I'd rather have in place of that 41.
It's what I tell people when they say Alabama claims all these national championships. Well, they could claim 27. I've done the research, and what I found, they could claim 27. So give up 41. You were 9-2. You lost to Vanderbilt, and you lost to Mississippi State, which was the only year Mississippi State's ever won the SEC a week before the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. and so that one, you know, they were ranked 20th in the poll. There were 32 services that gave it to Minnesota that year, and one gave it to Alabama. But hell, Auburn could claim 10. Jay Jacobs made a tactical error when he was AD at Auburn by putting it out for public debate. Should Auburn claim them? Well, I'm sure, one or two Alabama fans got on there and said, no. You can't worry about it. Alabama in 1983, going into the season, at the end of 82, when Coach Bryant died, they had 6, all won by him starting in 1961. Then they went back and claimed those other 5. You might as well do it. When A&M joined the SEC, Johnny, they claimed 2 or 3 extra ones.
Well, if you go back, though, I mean, Alabama was winning Rose Bowls in the 20s.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Though the 25, 26 legit, the only one that to me is not legitimate during that span was 41. Now you can go, well, 73, you were national champs, then you lose to Notre Dame. Yeah, but back then, national championships were awarded before bowl games. So if you want to play that game, let's just go down the Heisman Trophy race and let's take Pat Sullivan's Heisman Trophy away. Because for those that don't remember, Pat Sullivan, before the regular season was played out, he wins the Heisman Trophy and gets awarded the trophy on a Thursday night. That's when the announcement was made, on Thanksgiving night. And 2 days later, Alabama beat Auburn 31-7. And I will always say this, and there's a reason why Johnny Musso was the SEC Player of the Year that year in 1971. If they had waited until after the regular season games, Pat Sullivan would not have won. Greg Pruitt, who played for Oklahoma, who finished 3rd, he would not have won because he had a lackluster game against Nebraska, and they lost in that classic game on Thanksgiving afternoon. Johnny Musso came to play. He had a solid game against Auburn. And given the choice of an Alabama player like Johnny Musso, an Alabama program that had never had a Heisman Trophy winner at that point, and Ed Marinaro, I'm sorry, we're going Alabama over Ed Marinaro. Johnny Musso would have won the Heisman Trophy in 71 if it had been awarded after all the regular season games had played out.
Yeah, years later in the mid-'80s, and I'm not sure if that was the year when Bo Jackson won it in 85. He won it close vote because people questioned, did he pull himself out of the Tennessee game or whatever? But he had played in the Georgia game later that season with 2 or 3 broken ribs. I think he proved he was the best player. But they tried to put Gordy Lockbaum, a 2-way player at Holy Cross, in there. Hell of a player. But the Ed Marinaro, that's good on spaghetti or, good Italian food, but not going to win the Heisman Trophy. I mean,
How
Cornell.
About that stretch? You bring up Bo Jackson in that 85 season, the year he wins the Heisman. How ironic is this, that during that 9-year stretch, and we're talking about some top 10 teams there for Auburn, but a 9-year stretch of every year, except for one being a top 25 team, the only one they were not was 85, and that was also the only time they were number 1 at any point during that stretch. They were number 1 in the country in 85 before losing to Tennessee in September. And then after losing the Iron Bowl, they fall out of the top 25. That's the only team for Auburn during that 9-year stretch beginning in 82 that Auburn did not finish in the top 25. That was Bo Jackson's final year. How ironic is that?
Yeah, 8-4. Lost 36-22, whatever, in the Cotton Bowl to Jackie Sherrill's A&M team. It was 22-16 game down there at the end, and just couldn't do it. Bo had a 73-yard pass. He caught, swing pass out of the backfield. Hell of a performance by him, but that defense on that 85 team just wasn't good enough. But I remember Thursday night when John Ott and the members of the Downtown Athletic Club in New York City, they handed an envelope and they said, it was a Thursday night at halftime of the Georgia Tech Georgia game.
Right.
We were all watching the house when I lived, in Memphis as a kid. And they said, one name here. The winner is Pat Sullivan, Auburn. Congratulations, Pat. And they cheer. But that was Thursday night when they did that, wasn't it? And it was the
Thursday night on a Thanksgiving night. And then 2 days later is the Iron Bowl.
31-7. And I think
Pat Sullivan did not even throw a touchdown. The only touchdown was in that game was thrown by Al Unger, if you remember.
See, and that was and I remember because I was so angry. I had on my Pat Sullivan jersey and I jumped into the holly bushes. And to this day, I still have that jersey. There's a rip in the right sleeve when I got caught on that. But you're right. The Heisman was so big back then. It was almost like winning the national championship.
Now, it was, and that's why I really love having those guys from the 60s and 70s on. I mean, even for the first 20 years, the Heisman Trophy, most of the players like, okay, whatever. It really did not become a big deal until the end of the 60s, that famous game with O.J. Simpson and Gary Beban, where that vote had already come in. And Gary Beban, although UCLA loses to USC after that great run by O.J. Simpson, Gary Beban wins the Heisman that year. The very next year, O.J. wins the Heisman. And I was also thinking, we're bringing up some of the things in the 70s. I went back and did some math because I always hate the way Bear Bryant went out. And everybody thought that the game passed him by the year that he hung up the whistle after 82. If we had, and I did the math yesterday and went back because I had Joe LeBoux on when this greatness that we see. I think starting in 71 and what happened in the 70s, yes, Alabama had previously won 6 national championships. Or 5 actually to that point before Bear added 6 in the 60s and 70s. But it was in 71 during that era, I think, is now why when we look at the Alabama program and we see the fans with the expectations for national titles, I think it's because of the fact that, Alabama added 3 more in the 70s, but not just that. I mean, I was doing the math. How about during an 11-year stretch, if we'd had a college football playoff back in the 70s, Alabama would have played for the national championship in 9 of those 11 years. How about this conference record? 9 SEC championships. Even Nick Saban can't claim that during that kind of frame. 9 SEC titles in that 11-year period. 4 conference losses. Only 4 losses in an 11-year period, and 2 of those happened in 76. The team that went 9-3. So take away those, the other 10 years, 2 conference losses, period. Pure domination. And the fact that they always said that, the game had passed him by. The year before, Alabama would have been one of the 4 playoff teams in 1981. Let that sink in.
Yeah, it is. Look, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, is on with us.
Hey, Rodney.
May Veterinary Clinic, Tider Insider Report, Tuscaloosa, Northport, 2 locations. Dr. Wayne May started it all in 1964, and Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, all their fellow doctors, associates, the techs, everybody there to serve you. They have Camp May dog and cat daycare facility open every day of the week. Now Sundays drop off and pick up only from 3 to 5 p.m. They have an outdoor swimming pool connecting cat condos, the best veterinary medicine care. People come from far and wide. We've taken dogs there. They do a phenomenal job. They love what they do. They do what they love. Let's do this. Let's just take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider TV, is going to be on with us. Johnny, stay on with us if you can. This is awesome stuff. You want to get information that you can use and, win the debate on the trading floor or at work or wherever you are. Listen to these guys. We'll be right back.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Okay, Rob Brown back here with Johnny Ballpark Frank. Rodney. Man, we've been talking a lot about history, about college football playoff rankings and all. And then there's these games coming up this weekend, like the one in Tuscaloosa, LSU and Alabama. I think everybody's been building toward this. In Alabama, they lost to Texas. I think a lot of people don't remember, not thinking they've not lost an SEC game. LSU lost to Florida State in the opener badly, lost to Ole Miss. It's, do or die for LSU in this one. I think Bama has quietly, they're sitting there at number 8 in the rankings. They've worked themselves right back into the championship race. Rodney, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about this matchup Saturday in Tuscaloosa, LSU and Bama.
Yeah. Now, first of all, I would say Johnny threw out some really nice stats and, put it all into context of what Coach Bryant's career here would have looked like in the present day. And I thought that was great. It's why a lot of people always ask, hey, who was the greatest? Was it Coach Bryant or was it Coach Saban? And I mean, it's just two different eras of college football. So I really don't think that, that's a real fair kind of comparison. But I really appreciate the comments that Johnny had. But as far as this game goes, Alabama has come a long way since that Texas game. There's no question about that. And, they've developed as a team in many ways. They've developed a lot of character over the process of the last several weeks. And, we saw it in the Tennessee game in the second half, how they performed. And this is the game, man. Look, I think a lot of people, I'm not sure LSU isn't better than Texas, to be honest with you. I think Daniels is a better quarterback than Ewers. I think Texas caught Alabama at a really, really good time, and that's not taking anything away from Texas. I think they're a really good team. But I know LSU is not probably defensively as good as Texas, but overall, man, they're a really dangerous team. I mean, with Jaden Daniels, the way they can score points. And the reason they're so dangerous against Alabama is Alabama is not really a team offensively that, has been scoring a lot of points. They've kind of, I don't want to say struggled along, but they certainly haven't been nearly as productive. They're down, 10 points or so. I haven't looked at the stats, but I know they're at least under 10 or 11 points or more, double digits for sure, than what they would put up last year. So this is a team that with this matchup, they may be forced out of their comfort zone a little bit in terms of offensively having to be productive.
I was maybe ask Rodney a question. Rodney, when I've seen LSU play, I think every game except the Army game this year, and of the teams that did well in making the adjustments to, you're not going to ever stop a Jaden Daniels, but you can slow him down. I thought Florida State did a great job. For the entire game, but especially the second half. And I'll be really curious to see exactly what Kevin Steele and Alabama's defense, what they can do utilizing that type of past success that teams have had slowing down LSU and how they would utilize that. Because I think of all the games that LSU has played this year, I think that is the one for me that coaches could use to maybe, if you've got the talent, which Alabama certainly has talent on the defensive side of the ball, to be able to utilize some of those things that Florida State used to slow down LSU.
Mm-hmm. And I don't remember that game that well. I mean, I watched some of it, as I recall, the first game of the year. And I know that I remember LSU had some plays that they missed that were open for big plays, yeah, I mean, obviously Florida State played really, really well, but I don't really, to be honest with you, I haven't gone back and looked at them in that game. And but look, I think, Alabama defensively, I think they're stopping the run. I think they're run even.
Rodney may have lost you there for a second, but Rodney, you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We lost you there for just a second. Okay. But Johnny and Rodney both, this game, this LSU Alabama matchup, I like this comment that just came in here from Ann in Mountain Brook, talking about just the significance. This is Saban's toughest game. He still cares about LSU, but he loves Bama. And LSU people, they love to hate on him. But look what he did to that LSU program. They were really good before he got, but he woke them up. And now, the last 3 coaches prior to Brian Kelly have all won national championships. And Rodney, this game, this is a huge game. And a lot of people will tell you, and I like this one, Rich and Daphne, Alabama versus LSU is the best rivalry in the SEC.
Well, I mean, there's some good ones. I know that's certainly up there with some of the better ones for sure. But like I was saying, I think that Alabama stopping the run is first and foremost, and then they've got to keep Daniels hemmed in. They can't allow him to break out of the pocket as a runner. He hurt them last year on scrambles. They've got to. He can also throw on the run extremely well. We've seen that. We saw it in the Army game where he hit Brian Thomas with a long touchdown. He's just a very dangerous player. And I'll tell you this: if you go back and look at Joe Milton, even Quinn Ewers, for that matter. The pass rush lanes broke down for Alabama defensively up front. Are they going to be disciplined? Those guys keeping their pass rush lanes to not allow these quarterbacks to break off runs when you've got players covered, got receivers covered. And I think that was a key. Joe Milton had some really big runs in this last one, and KJ Jefferson had some big scrambles in the Arkansas game. I mentioned Quinn Ewers. So I think that's going to be a real key to kind of slowing down this LSU offense. It's keeping him hemmed in, being disciplined up front. But, as far as the rivalry, Rob, obviously there's a lot of built-in reasons for that. Nick Saban formerly being at LSU, winning the national championship there. He's the guy that's, I guess you would consider him, since Paul Dietzel, maybe the greatest coach they've had. Winning that national championship.
Yeah.
Rodney, a couple of things too. I go back to that Florida State game, but there was another area that I'm glad to see. It looks like adjustments were being made. As far as the punt return game, I don't know if Kool-Aid McKinstry had lost his confidence or what, but allowing all these balls to go past them, all you got to do is just catch the ball. I know a change had been made there. The other thing, and I'm still waiting for this to help protect Jalen Milroe, what Florida State did, they could not establish the running game in that first half. They added an extra back, which also provided extra protection for Jordan Travis. I'm still waiting for Alabama to realize they need help as far as with the pass blocking and especially against an LSU defense. I would love to see them add an extra body back there to help Jalen Milroe not lose his confidence and being able to, get his, first, second, third options as far as in the receiving game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they've used Oots a little bit, Robbie Oots at times to do that. And you're right, especially the left tackles had a lot of trouble with pass rushers, pass protection, but they've been inconsistent. But at times, they've really protected well too. That's the crazy thing.
I know.
But I think too. Now, look, people talk about the offensive line. Jalen Milroe's got to get the ball out of his hands. He's 14th. He's 14th in the SEC in holding the ball. And I'll tell you another thing where I really wish Jalen would do this is when things aren't there, when he wants to go through his progressions. I appreciate that, and he's doing a good job of that. But I think even the Alabama coaching staff, based on a few things I've heard, just feels like, Jalen, if it's not there, if you've gone through your progressions, you can't hold the ball, 4 or 5 seconds, you've got the wheels, take off. And I know that Milroe doesn't want to be perceived as a running quarterback. I get that. But you got incredible legs. You've got incredible gift running the ball. He had a big run against Tennessee where he pulled it down on can't remember if it was 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 15, whatever. He pulled it down, got the first down. Those are back-breaking runs for a defense when a quarterback can do that. That's what Jaden Daniels would do. And I think if Milroe would do it, I don't say it has to be, his first instinct, but I just think if he would use that a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 times a game, I mean, I think it could really be valuable. But like I said, I agree with you. I mean, yeah, they do need to, and it has been. Sometimes I wonder why don't they have a guy in there chipping, with this tackle, helping him out a little bit. And you wonder about that sometimes. But again, I think it's just been a combination of that and Milroe holding on to the ball sometimes.
Looking, at Alabama, and I like this comment about, with the internet, you got listeners and viewers everywhere. Thank you, all of you, for listening and watching. And we have the best guests like Johnny Ballpark Franks and Rodney Orr, who work their asses off to put out great content. You don't have newspapers everywhere like you used to. I recommend you follow both of these guys as much as you can. You'll be much wiser for it. Allison in Chattanooga. Kevin Steele is a big reason for the number 8 ranking for the Tide. And I'm just a big Kevin Steele fan because of the fact that he would go into the store where my son worked his freshman year at Auburn and always spend time talking to him, 20, 30, he didn't know my son from Adam. He's a guy that everybody at Auburn, when you talk to him, love the guy. Tigers Unlimited people, hey man, what can I do to help you? How many coaches do that? And he's an alpha male, and he puts tough back into football. But, you talked about it in the preseason. He knows what he's doing. It's his 3rd time with Nick Saban.
Yeah. No, I think Steele's done an incredible job. I think he deserves he's getting a lot of kudos, and the crazy thing is probably throughout his career, Kevin Steele's been shortchanged for whatever reason. I don't know if it's for that 70 points they gave up when he was at Clemson that time, whatever it is. He's been shortchanged, but I do think he did a great job at Auburn. I agree with you. I'll never forget that 2019 LSU game in Baton Rouge, as I recall. That he held that offense to its lowest output of the year. I think it was 23 points. Yeah. Kevin Steele's done a fabulous job here, and I tell you what, probably more than anything, or as much as anything, it's just, it's the intensity that they play with, the effort that they give. I mean, I know there's a lot of other things that he's, helped in terms of implementing with this defense, but I would say those things are the things I see that honestly, and you know what, this isn't anything about Pete Golding or whatever, but I just say that, and I know he's doing a good job at Ole Miss, but I didn't see that the last few years. I didn't see that intensity, the effort, play in and play out consistently that I'm seeing right now. Guys are in position to make plays. I'm not saying they always make them, but they're in position to make plays. They're tackling better fundamentally, doing a lot of good things. And I think that's all a big part of Kevin Steele. And I think he's helped every position coach too on that defensive unit because, he is a walk around defensive coordinator. He doesn't coach a specific position. So he helps out at all those spots.
Yeah. I have a quick question for you to see how, this is hypothetical, but first of all, I have Georgia not going 3-0 over these next 3 games. Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee. I had them losing one of either against Ole Miss. Most likely, I have Missouri with a great opportunity to beat them. I bring this up I think Alabama certainly needs Georgia to win out to add to their resume if you're thinking Alabama in the college football playoff, because I think tonight Alabama will be 8th. And the problem for Alabama is the fact Texas is ahead of them. If things play out with Florida State, the winner of Michigan, Ohio State being there, and then the Washington, Oregon, if they remain unblemished the rest of the way, which I expect them to do, Alabama could be the SEC champion and be in that 5th spot looking on the outside in this last year of the college football playoff. How would the fan base of Alabama react to that?
Oh, well, I think you know the answer to that one.
Absolutely.
As Bill Oliver once famously said. But no, listen, you know how it would cause an eruption because they feel like whoever the SEC champion is, as long as it's no more than one lost team, is going to be in the playoffs. And like you said, there's a scenario that could play out that wouldn't happen. And if that's the way it plays out, that's just the way it plays out, honestly. But the reaction would be you could only imagine. But I'll say this too, looking at some of these, I'm just not, and I think Texas is better. I do think they're better this year than they've been in a few years. Obviously, I think a lot of that is I think the defense coordinator's done a great job. I think, and honestly, Bo Davis has done an incredible job up front defensively for them. They're playing up front like Alabama teams used to play. Some Alabama teams have played in the past. And I think they're more physical than what they've been. But at the same time, I'm not totally sold on Texas either.
I'm not either. I agree with you, Rodney.
And I think that, like I said, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but and look, I grew up in Texas, and I've got a lot of Texas friends, and I told them before the game, you're catching Alabama at a great time, and they did. I think they caught Alabama at a really good time. And, again, maybe it would be a more interesting outcome if they played again. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is, I guess, in the overall picture is that I'm just not really sold Texas is going to finish out. If they lose a game, which they could easily lose something here over the stretch, they're out of it. So that would be really interesting. Now, would Oklahoma they've got one loss. If they were to win out and beat somebody in the Big 12 championship game, would they be I don't know where they would be ranked. I really don't. But I know one thing. I would think that Alabama's loss to Texas, it would probably, not prevent them from going if that were the scenario.
Yeah. I mean, these rankings come out tonight and a lot can happen. Remember the 2011 season. I mean, all you can do, as Nick Saban says, is control the controllables and just keep winning. I like that comment by one of our, viewers. The team that avoids the turnovers wins Saturday. Well, who's got the better running game, LSU or Alabama?
Alabama in the second half of games, if we can go.
Yeah.
If Alabama could do for a full game what they do in second halves of games, I would say Alabama. But otherwise, that's up for debate until we see Saturday night.
Yeah. They looked like they were going to play a full game against Arkansas, and then they folded in the second half and had to hang on at the end to win the game. And again, I think you look at this Tennessee game even in the way they perform. I mean, I don't think against LSU, you're not going to be able to throw interceptions in the end zone. You're not going to be able to fumble the ball inside your 25-yard line. I'm going to say this. Everybody comes up with one key or keys to games. You could pick out a lot of different things that I think are going to be that we think could be keys to this Alabama LSU game. But I think if you're Alabama, I think the one thing I'm going to be watching, and this is me, this is Jalen Milroe's game. I mean, you got to have every part's got to contribute, but I think he's got to make the throws. I think he's got to. If he's got an opportunity to pull it down, if he needs to, he's got to make these plays. He can't be hit and miss. You can't turn the ball over in the red zone. You can't fumble inside your 25-yard line. All of these things I think are going to contribute. I think it's with the pressure that LSU can put on you offensively, with the way they score points, I think Alabama's they're going to have to produce some points. And I think a lot of that is going to be, Milroe, you got to be consistent, man. You got to make those throws. We can't have a bad first half. And, we've got to be productive. And you know what? I don't think since the Middle Tennessee State game, I don't think Alabama scored a touchdown on an opening drive since that game.
Well, it'd be a good time to start. How about Saturday night? And the other thing I want to see too, when you hold up the four fingers, I want the Bama players to actually feel confident when they hold up those four fingers, because especially after losing to Texas, after having the lead in the fourth quarter, I want that holding up the four fingers to mean something for those players and not think, well, we should win this game. I want them to believe they're going to win. And that's what they need to get back also.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think going in that fourth quarter, they were up, 16-13 in that game. And, they weren't getting a lot of help. The defense wasn't getting a ton of help from the offense in that game, as I recall. But you're right. I think, that is, and it's been they played really well in the fourth quarter against Tennessee. I mean, you shut them out in the second half. That's pretty good because Tennessee, I know they're not what they were with Hendon Hooker and last year, but they're still a good team. They're still a very good offense. So, you're right. I think Alabama needs to play a complete game.
Yeah, you're right. Look, unfortunately, we run out of time here on this Tider Insider Report brought to you by May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport, 2 locations, open every day of the week. Sundays, May Veterinary Clinic, Camp May for dogs and cats, 3 to 5 p.m. drop off and pick up only. Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, went to Auburn with them. Great people. They have people come from all over. We've taken dogs there before. They love them. They do what they love, and they love what they do. They're just great people. Al, Kelly, Waller, Joe, Guy, Dr. Wayne May. He started it all in 1964. Absolutely love these people. Rodney, Tider Insider TV tonight, 6:30 p.m. You and Gary Harris will put on a great show. Let people know how they can follow you. And then, Johnny, you do the same thing. And I'll just say this, most often we see the face of Christ and the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We, the people, determine everything. Control the controllables. Be kind to people. Help people out. And remember, we're blessed in ways we can't even imagine. Go bless others. Help people out with no expectations of anything in return except knowing you help people out. Rodney, let them know.
Yeah, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check, gives y'all our premium information, but also our all sports forum. That's our community there of Alabama fans. We're constantly on there exchanging with them and discussing and all of these things. It's a great Alabama community. TiderInsider.com.
I'm a big fan of Rodney's work, by the way. And for me, you can just follow me on X/Twitter at BP Franks Show. You can also follow me on Facebook at Johnny Ballpark Franks.
Hey, man, we are blessed to have great guests like Johnny, like Rodney. We'll be back on tomorrow morning. Watch those rankings tonight, but watch Tider Insider TV at 6:30 p.m. on YouTube. You will love it. We'll see you tomorrow. We're out of here.